Hello everyone, welcome to my kitchen. Tonight I am going to be showing you how to make one of my absolute favorite meals to make, and it is going to be sticky sesame chicken meatballs. It took me 3 times to say that properly. I kept trying to say sticky. So we are going to go ahead and proceed and make these chicken meatballs. I will show you how easy and how delicious this meal is. So I've mentioned before that I like to grind my own chicken for anything where I'm using a ground chicken application. The reason is that ground chicken is just expensive, and I find that I can get it to a pretty good consistency just by using my food processor. And another thing that I love about this is I can go ahead and add my aromatics in, which is what I'm going to do here. So I have about 3 green onions, 2 large garlic cloves, and I'm going to be putting in some minced ginger. This is actually such a hero. I love using this pre-minced ginger like this because you can get just the amount you want, and it's nice and basically like kind of pureed up, so it's already a really good consistency for this, but you can use fresh ginger too. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and start pulsing up my chicken thighs with those aromatics, and then I'll bring you back when we're ready to roll. So one thing that I did fail to mention is if you are using your food processor to get your chicken ground up, just make sure to cut it into about 1-inch cubes before throwing it in your food processor so that it'll be a little bit easier to chop up. You can put your chicken in there whole, without bones, of course. You can put in there whole, but your food processor is going to have to work a little bit harder. So it's a good idea to just kind of pre-chop it so that your food processor doesn't have to work quite as hard. All right, so my chicken is ready to go here. I have put in a little bit of salt and pepper. So your recipe for this is going to be 2 pounds of ground chicken, whether you make that ground up yourself or get it from the store. If you are doing it yourself, I absolutely recommend using chicken thighs, boneless, skinless chicken thighs, because they are going to be so much juicier than a chicken breast would. So I definitely recommend going with thighs if you're doing it yourself. So 2 pounds of ground chicken, and then about 3 fresh green onions. If you don't have green onions, that's fine. You can use half of a yellow onion, or you can just omit it. 2 large or 3 small garlic cloves, and about a tablespoon of some minced ginger. And then, of course, some salt and pepper. I think I did about probably a teaspoon of salt and about half a teaspoon of black pepper. And now what I'm going to do after all of my meat has been mixed together so that everything's got some of the aromatics, some of the seasoning, is I'm just going to go ahead and start forming meatballs. Now on my stove here, you can't really see it from that angle, but on my stove I did get a medium saucepan, not saucepan, skillet. I use it to make sauces, so my brain goes saucepan, but it's not a saucepan, it's a skillet with high walls. And put some oil in there. I use sunflower oil. It doesn't really matter what kind of oil you use. You can use sesame oil as well. The only thing I would caution you with is if you use sesame oil, it will impart flavor to your chicken meatballs, but it will make them very salty. So just be careful with the amount of sesame oil you use if that is what you're using. So I do have that starting to warm up. So basically my process here is I've got my bowl right here next to my pan, and as I get my meatballs done, which of course you can do any size that you want, I'd recommend like a medium size, a normal size meatball kind of, because if you go too large, it's going to take longer to cook. If you go too small, it's going to be dinky. But once my pan is hot, I'm just going to start putting these in there and just keep going until all of them are ready. All right, so one thing I do recommend here with your chicken meatballs is to make sure to let them get a good little crust underneath, because that will help to make sure that they stay together. If you flip them too early, they may kind of fall apart, and they'll still be just as tasty, but they won't exactly be meatball shapes. Okay, so while our chicken meatballs cook, we are going to get started on our sticky sauce. And we're going to be using some conglomerate of all of these. It looks pretty weird, I will admit. And I'm honest here, I do not use grape jelly as an ingredient. I kind of actually hate that, but this really works in this. It really gives you the best flavor, the best sweetness that you're gonna get. You can also use grape juice, but the problem with using grape juice is that you have to reduce it down first to get it to the saucy level that you need. The grape jelly, you don't really have to do that with. So grape jelly is going to be our starting point, and then we're going to add in some hoisin sauce. You can use any sauce like this that you like. You could even use teriyaki sauce. I particularly like this brand. It's really, really tasty and good. We're going to use fish sauce instead of salt. So this is pretty salty stuff, you know, if you ever used it before. So instead of putting salt in our sauce, we're going to just use the fish sauce to taste. And then I also like it to have a little bit of a spicy kick. So this spicy chili sauce is going to give us that. So let's get started making the sauce. Okay, so the first thing you want to start with is your grape jelly. And I just have this on a low heat so that it'll get a little bit like melted down, so it's more of a sauce and less coagulated. So I've got about 1.5 to 2 cups of grape jelly in here. I don't really measure this stuff out. I kind of just dump and go. So I will give you the measurements as I see them, like what it looks like in the pot, but normally I'm just putting this stuff in until it tastes right. So yeah, as far as your meatballs go, make sure that you temp those with a thermometer so that you know that they are done before you take them out of your skillet. Just like any chicken product, you want it to temp out to be 165 degrees. My grape jelly has melted down now to a nice saucy consistency. It's coating the back of my spatula very well. So now we're gonna go ahead and add in our other flavorings. So the hoisin sauce, I'm gonna use probably about, and it does hate to come out of this jar because it's really thick, which is part of why it's good. Probably gonna use about 1/4 cup of this. And then I'm gonna start off with like about a tablespoon of the chili sauce and give that a stir. You can also add in more ginger here if you like it. If you really are a ginger fan, adding more in the sauce is a good idea. But I don't usually do that. I usually just keep it to the meatballs themselves. We're gonna add our fish sauce now. Start off with 1/2 teaspoon and taste it. But I'm guessing we're gonna go to a teaspoon. Now that all of my chicken meatballs are cooked, I've put them back in the same skillet that I used to cook them in, and I'm just gonna pour my sauce over top of them. And then I'm gonna turn this skillet on to just a low heat. Low heat. And just mix them around in there. And what I want to happen here is I want to go ahead and make sure that everything is coated really well. And I want to let this sauce get a little bit thicker, a little bit reduced and stickier. Sauce is at the consistency that I want right now. It's all nice and thick and bubbly. But if you have trouble getting it to this consistency just by putting it on the heat, which I did tonight, some nights it works and some nights it don't. So we'll just say that. But if you do have trouble getting it to the right consistency, if it's a little too thin for what you want, just make a quick cornstarch slurry. So like a tablespoon of cornstarch with like 2 tablespoons of water. Whisk that up really good and then just mix that in here and give this about 2 more minutes to sit in the sauce, and then you'll be good to go. So now, of course, I'm going to turn it off. Be a good idea. I like to serve this with broccoli and just white rice. That way you really get a lot of the flavor from the meatball and the sesame sauce, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then I just like to sprinkle some sesame seeds on top. And there you go. That's your chicken sesame meatball. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, just leave me a comment below. Bye-bye.